The door of apartment 4B on Trad Street swung open before the second knock. Marlowe stood there in a gray silk robe, hair still loose, a coffee cup half raised. She expected the stylist for the gala. She got Declan instead. Pale blue shirt, sleeves rolled once, a small velvet box resting in the cup of his palm. He did not smile. He did not soften the moment with greetings. He said, even and quiet, "You said you needed a husband by Sunday. I came." Outside, the bells of Street Phillips struck 9. Neither of them moved. Thursday night, the 32nd floor of Ainsley Tower held only one lit window. Marlowe sat behind a glass desk that had once belonged to her mother, her shoes off, her blazer slung over a chair that no longer seemed worth the effort of facing. 40 minutes past 11, trust documents stacked at her elbow. A red sticky note in Carlton's handwriting clung to the top page like an order. Sunday, announce, no exceptions. She had read the same paragraph 4 times. The words still meant what they had meant the first time. The hallway lock clicked. A wheeled cart bumped softly against the doorframe. Declan stepped inside, paused when he saw her, and lifted his hand in a small apology. "Sorry. I'll come back." "No." She did not look up immediately. "It's fine. Empty it. The smell is worse than the silence." He moved through the room the way he always did, not invisible, just unhurried. He lifted the bin liner, tied it, set down a fresh one. Marlowe watched him without meaning to. She had passed him at least a dozen times in the last 6 months, and could not remember a single thing she had ever said to him beyond "thank you." She reached for the coffee pot on the credenza, poured 1 cup, considered the second one, poured it anyway. "How long have you worked nights here?" 11 months. He took the cup she pushed across the desk, held it without drinking. "And what did you do before that?" A pause. "Something else." She laughed once, dry, almost a cough. "That's a complete sentence and 0 information." "It usually is." She leaned back in the chair, looked at the dark glass of the window, then back at him. The exhaustion in her had stopped being a feeling. It had become a temperature. "Tell me something, mister. What's your last name?" "Hayes." "Mr. Hayes, if you happened to find a husband for me before Sunday, I would quit this entire circus and move to a cabin where nobody owns a calendar. Do you happen to keep one in your pocket?" She had meant it as a joke. She heard, even as the words left her mouth, that it had not quite landed as one. Declan looked at her a moment longer than a man emptying trash had any business doing. His eyes moved, only for half a second, to the red sticky note on the document stack, to the name Carlton Pruitt printed across the cover sheet. Something in his face cooled. The viewer would not yet know why. He set the untouched coffee back on the desk. "You should sleep, Miss Ainsley. I'll turn the light off when I go." "Marlowe." "Marlowe." He said her name once, evenly, and then nothing else. He pushed the cart toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. "For what it's worth, a husband by Sunday isn't the kind of thing a person should be required to find." She blinked. By the time she had a sentence ready, he was already in the hallway, the cart rolling quietly toward the elevator. The door eased shut behind him. The red sticky note on her desk lifted a 1/4 of an inch in the draft and settled again. She did not, in the end, sleep. Friday morning, the lobby of Ainsley Tower belonged to the 7:40 crowd. Coffee cups, lanyards, a security guard nodding at faces he no longer needed to check. Marlowe came through the revolving door already on her phone, already 2 minutes behind, and walked straight into a small body in a pink raincoat. The little girl looked up. 8 years old, maybe. Brown hair and 2 stubborn braids. She did not apologize. She did not move. She just looked. "Juno." Declan's voice came from a step behind. He set a hand on the child's shoulder. Gentle. "Eyes ahead, please." "Sorry," Marlowe said, and crouched to her bag, which had spilled. "Entirely my fault." The girl did not look away. After a long moment, she said in a small, clear voice, "Are you sad? Your eyes look sad, like Daddy's looked when Mommy died." The lobby noise did not stop. It only seemed to. Declan exhaled. "Juno, sweetheart, it's all right." Marlowe stayed crouched. She finished gathering her bag without rushing. "Thank you for noticing, Juno. That was a very brave thing to say." The girl considered this gravely, then nodded as if a transaction had been completed. Declan bent to retie the laces on her right sneaker. As he did, his sleeve slid back. Marlowe, already standing, already half turned away, caught the inside of his wrist for half a second. A small mark, not a tattoo, a jeweler's stamp, fine and clean, the kind pressed into the bottom of a state silver. 4 characters, H and W. Then 1887, she filed it away the way she filed most things she did not yet understand. Precisely, and without comment. "Have a good day at school, Juno," she said. The child waved seriously. Declan nodded once, the way he always did, and steered his daughter toward the revolving door. Marlowe rode the elevator to the 32nd floor and pretended for 2 hours that she had a meeting that mattered. At 11 that night, alone in her apartment on Trad Street, she opened her laptop and typed 3 things into the search bar. H, ampersand, W, 1887. The first result was a Boston firm, Hayes and Whitcomb, estate jewelers and silversmiths, founded 1887, 138 years, a black and cream website with the kind of typography that did not need to try. She clicked through to a page titled Leadership Archive, Old Portraits, Black Tie, Wood Paneling. The board photograph from 2021 showed 7 people seated at a long table, center frame, second from the left. She zoomed in. The face was 3 years younger and 3 winters less tired. The jawline was the same. The mouth was the same. The eyes were carrying less in that photograph than the eyes she had spoken to last night. The caption beneath the portrait was 4 words long. Declan Hayes, principal heir. Marlowe set the phone face down on the coffee table. She did not get up. She did not pour herself anything. Her heart was beating slowly and very hard. The question she found herself sitting with was not the obvious one. It was not who he was. It was the other one. Why would a man like that, with a name like that, be emptying her trash bin at 11:47 on a Thursday night? She turned the phone back over only once, to look at the photograph again. Then she shut the laptop, drew her knees up, and did not move for a long time. Saturday came up gray over the harbor. Marlowe drove herself to Ainsley Tower at 7:15, parked in her own space, and rode the elevator up with one question rehearsed and the rest of her face composed. She found him on the 32nd floor, halfway up a small folding ladder, replacing the long fluorescent tube in the corridor ceiling. The hallway smelled faintly of dust and warm metal. He was alone. The floor was empty. She let her heels announce her. He looked down from the ladder, then back at the fixture. Morning, morning. She stood at the base of the ladder. She did not sit. She did not pretend. "May I ask you one question, Mr. Hayes?" "You can ask more than one." "Hayes and Whitcomb, 1887, Boston." She said the words without emphasis. "Are you that family, or are you a coincidence?" He finished seating the tube. The hallway light steadied. He climbed down 2 rungs and then 1, took the step onto the carpet, and faced her without hurry. "I was," he said. 3 years ago. Now I have an 8-year-old daughter and a night shift. Whatever's important enough to keep, I keep." You stepped away. I handed it to a board of trustees. They run it well. They don't need me to walk the floor every morning. Juno does. She did not ask the next question. He did not offer the next answer. He bent to fold the small ladder. The fixture above them hummed and settled. The elevator at the end of the corridor opened. 2 sets of footsteps. Marlowe recognized them before she turned. Carlton came down the hall in a navy blazer he had not earned, with Bennett Crail half a step behind him. Bennett was 45 and handsome in the way that wedding photographers liked. Carlton was 54 and carried his smile in the front pocket of his jacket. "Marlowe, dear." Carlton's voice had its Saturday warmth. "I didn't expect to find you in conversation with the contractor." Declan did not stand up. He was crouched by the folded ladder, threading a screw back into a small toolbox. He did not look up. The screwdriver in his hand, very slightly, tightened in his grip. "He's replacing the lights in our hallway," Marlowe said. Her voice was even. "Would you prefer the hallway dark, or do you mind if I let him finish?" Carlton's smile did not falter. It only tightened by a millimeter. "By all means. I only meant that one ought to keep some distance from hourly staff." "Optics, noted." "The gala is tomorrow," he said, as if she did not know. 7. The Hibernian. "Your speech is already in the program. Bennett will pick you up at 6:40. The board is very much looking forward to a public announcement before dessert." He said the last sentence with his eyes on Declan's bent back. "The way a man marks a fence post. I'll be there," Marlowe said. "On time." Carlton patted her shoulder once. Bennett offered a small, careful nod, the kind a man offers when he has been told to. The two of them turned and walked back toward the elevator. When the doors closed, Declan stood. He did not look at her with any visible feeling. He picked up the folded ladder, tucked it under his arm, and said only, "Lights are good for another 2 years, ma'am." He carried the ladder away down the corridor. Marlowe drove home at 1:40. She did not eat. She did not change. She went to the small wall safe behind the painting in the study and dialed in the 4-digit code her mother had set the year before she died. The trust document was where it had always been, in a leather folder she had not opened in 2 years. She sat on the floor with it across her knees because the chair felt too far from the ground. Clause 7, subsection B. She read it twice. Controlling voting rights shall remain with the female heir in line only upon her entering into a lawful marriage prior to her 38th birthday. In the absence of such a union, controlling voting rights shall transfer in full to the named co-trustee. Her 38th birthday was on Wednesday. The named co-trustee was Carlton Pruitt. She pulled out her phone and called the number she had not dialed in 4 years. Mr. Tobias Whelan picked up on the second ring. He had been her mother's attorney for 31 years. He had retired the spring after the funeral and bought a small house in Beaufort, Marlowe. His voice was older than she remembered. "I thought it might be today. You knew this clause was in there. I drafted 3 versions of that trust over the course of your mother's illness. None of the versions I drafted contained a clause requiring you to marry by any age." "Tobias, I cannot prove it, Marlowe. I am telling you what I know. Your mother did not write Clause 7, subsection B. Whether anyone ever proves who did is a separate matter." She closed the folder. She thanked him. She did not cry. She set the phone face down beside her on the rug and stayed sitting on the floor for a long time. At 4:15 she went back to the office. She did not know why. The 32nd floor was empty on weekends, the lights on the timer, the air on the low setting. She walked the corridor she had walked that morning. She found him in the small staff lounge at the back, folding fresh cleaning cloths into a square stack on the counter. He was not surprised to see her. She sat at the little laminate table. She did not take her coat off. She watched him fold cloths. After a minute she said, "May I ask you something else?" "You can." "Why this job?" "Why, of all the jobs a man with your name could have." He did not stop folding. He did not turn. He spoke quietly. "Because this building is quiet at night. Because my daughter sleeps better when I'm not on conference calls at 11 o'clock. Because I spent 10 years sitting at tables where every decision I made cost someone something, and at the end of those 10 years, I lost the only person I had been trying to come home to." He set the last cloth on the stack. He turned and leaned back against the counter. "What's broken in a building this size, anyone can fix in an hour. I needed work I could finish." She looked at him for a very long time. In 6 years, no one had asked her if she was all right without expecting a performance in return. He had not asked at all. He had simply let her sit in a room without having to be anything. Declan signed out at 10 on Saturday night. The underground garage of Ainsley Tower at that hour was mostly his footsteps and the hum of a fluorescent baylight that had been on the maintenance list for 2 months. He was 3 cars from his truck when she stepped out from behind the column marked B7. Mireille Sutton, 62, silver hair pinned back, the same navy concierge cardigan she had worn every night he had known her. He stopped walking. He did not speak. "Mr. Hayes." Her voice was barely above the hum of the light. "I have kept your name to myself for 10 months. I want you to know that. I would have kept it for 10 years. I know, but the girl upstairs." Mireille folded her hands at her waist. "Marlowe, what is happening to her is not a thing she earned, and it is not a thing I can keep watching from behind a desk." Declan set his keys back in his pocket. "Tell me," she told him. She had been on duty the night Carlton Pruitt brought a notary and a pen and a folder of revised trust documents to the 7th floor room at Roper Hospital, where Marlowe's mother had been dying for 11 days. Mireille had been asked to escort the notary up. She had carried the pen. She had watched Carlton lean over the bed and speak in a voice she had never forgotten. She had heard the elder Ainsley try to refuse. 3 times. In a voice that was already almost gone. Mireille had photographs of the dated documents. She had a short audio recording she had taken on her phone in the hallway because something had told her to. She had the timestamps. She had the room number. She had everything. Then why now? Declan said, not unkindly. Because he knows the address of my son's apartment in Mount Pleasant. He has mentioned it to me twice, in passing, the way a man does when he wants you to remember that he knows. Declan was quiet for a long moment. Tomorrow night is the gala, he said. I need until tomorrow evening. If you can hold the documents until then, I will make sure your son is somewhere Carlton Pruitt cannot reach, and I will make sure you have counsel of your own. Is that fair? That is more than fair. 6 in the morning. I'll have someone call you with details. She nodded once. She did not thank him. She walked back toward the elevator with the small, careful steps of a woman who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just put one corner of it down. Declan drove home to Queen Street with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. In his bedroom, he opened the top drawer of the dresser his grandmother had given him on his 20th birthday. Inside, a small dark green velvet box. He opened it. The ring inside had belonged to Adelaide Hayes, who had opened the Charleston branch of Hayes and Whitcomb in 1924 with money she had earned herself. He closed the box. He looked through the crack of Juno's door at the rise and fall of his daughter's breathing. He set the box in the inside pocket of the coat by the door. The hallway light clicked off behind him. Sunday morning, 9:14. The bells of Street Phillips were still in their third strike when Marlowe opened the door of apartment 4B and looked at the man she had not expected and had not, somewhere underneath, stopped half expecting. Declan did not come inside until she stepped back. He did not kneel. He did not lift the velvet box like a question. He held it the way a man holds something he is asking permission to set down. This was my grandmother's, he said. Adelaide Hayes. She opened the Charleston branch of our house in 1924. I did not bring it here to back you into anything. I brought it because I wanted you to know. By tonight, you have more than one option. Marlowe stepped aside without a word. He came in. She closed the door behind him with the careful weight of a person not yet sure what she had just decided. She did not invite him to the couch. She walked to the kitchen counter and set both palms flat on the marble and breathed once. Are you Declan Hayes? She did not turn around. Of Hayes and Whitcomb, I was. I still can be. If today requires it. Only for today. She turned. She did not look at the box. She looked at his face. There is more, she said. Or you would not have come like this. He set the box on the kitchen counter, 2 arms' lengths from her hand. He sat on the stool across from her without being asked. Mireille Sutton, he said. Our night concierge. She was in the room at Roper Hospital the night Carlton Pruitt brought the revised trust documents to your mother. The kitchen went very still. Marlowe lifted her coffee cup, found it cold, set it down again. She has photographs, Declan said. She has a short audio recording. She has the date and the room number and the name of the notary. She tried to refuse to carry the pen in. She was asked to. Why has she never said anything? He has been threatening her son. Quietly. For 2 years. Not in writing. Marlowe looked at the cold cup. She looked at the window. She looked at the small dark green box on her counter. She will testify, Declan went on, if her son is safe and if she has counsel that does not work for any of the Charleston families. I made a call at 6 this morning. The Hayes firm in Boston is sending 2 attorneys on the 11:30 flight. Her son is being moved this afternoon. None of it will be on Carlton's radar until tomorrow. She did not move for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was so low he had to lean forward. Why are you doing this? Don't tell me a polite reason. He looked at his hands on the counter. Because I stood in a hospital room for 9 months and watched a person I loved have every choice she had left taken from her by an illness no one could fight. I could not stop that. I could not save her. I have spent 3 years living with the fact that I could not. He raised his eyes. I am not going to stand in another room and watch a person be stripped of her choices by something I can stop. Not when I can stop it. Not this time. Marlowe did not open the box. She did not need to. At 12:20, Marlowe called her uncle from the landline in the study. Her voice was the voice she used for board meetings, smoothed and pleasant and slightly tired. Carlton, I'll be at the Hibernian at 7. On time. Wonderful, dear. Bennett will collect you at 6:40. That's fine. You sound well, Marlowe. I'm glad. Thank you, Uncle. She set the phone down. She stood at the window for a moment and looked at the magnolia tree across the street, which had been there longer than she had been alive. At the Mills house across town, Bennett Crale finished tying a half Windsor in front of the bathroom mirror. He was 45, divorced, agreeable. He had been told, by the only man whose phone calls he answered, that this was a sound merger. He believed it. He did not, at any point, ask Marlo what she believed. Declan picked Juno up from a sleepover on Sullivan's Island at 1 o'clock. He did not tell her about the evening. He told her they were going to see a friend at the harbor and bring sandwiches. Marlo called him at 1:20. "Bring sandwiches," she said. "I need to breathe before I go in." They sat on a wooden bench at Waterfront Park, the three of them, with the pineapple fountain behind them and the harbor opening out to the bridge. The breeze off the water was warm and salt-heavy. Juno was at one end with a shrimp salad sandwich. She ate the way she did most things, with serious attention. She finished half of it. She wiped her hands on a napkin. She turned and looked across her father at Marlo. "Do you like pancakes?" Marlo smiled. The smile surprised her. It was the first one she had let herself make in 3 days that did not require a reason. "I do. My dad makes pancakes with cheese. Salty ones. Not sweet. I have never had a pancake like that." Juno nodded once, the same grave certainty she had used in the lobby on Friday morning. "Then you should come to our house tomorrow." Declan did not correct her. He did not catch Marlo's eye. He kept his face turned toward the water and watched a small white sailboat make its slow way out of the channel. Marlo set her sandwich down. Her right hand rested on the wooden slat of the bench, palm down. Declan's left hand was already there. There was perhaps 2 inches between them. Neither hand moved. The wind lifted the corner of Juno's napkin. She caught it without looking. Marlo did not say anything. The thought she had, she kept. It was the simplest sentence she had spoken to herself in 6 years, and it sat in the middle of her chest the way a stone sits in the bottom of a still pool. For the first time in 6 years, she was not walking into something alone. She drove herself back to Trad Street at 4. She showered. She pinned her hair. She put on the black dress she had bought 11 months ago for an event she had not, in the end, attended. She did not open the velvet box. She put it in the small evening bag with her keys and her phone, and the lipstick she did not plan to reapply. She looked at herself in the mirror once. The woman looking back at her had not slept in 3 nights. She did not look afraid. At 6:30, she went downstairs to wait for the car. The Hibernian Hall on Meeting Street had been hosting Charleston weddings and gold anniversary dinners since 1840. On Sunday evening it held 312 people in black tie, 2 chandeliers from a county in Ireland, and a string quartet at the front of the ballroom playing something by Debussy. Carlton Pruitt stood at the head table with a flute of champagne and a smile that had been calibrated for cameras. Bennett Crale stood beside him in a dove-gray tuxedo, with his hands clasped behind his back and his eyes on the front door. Marlo came in 5 minutes late. She wore a sleeveless black gown and no jewelry, except a single ring on her right ring finger. Old gold, a small dark stone. The light from the chandelier caught it once and let it go. The man on her arm wore a tuxedo, borrowed at 3 that afternoon from a college friend in Boston, who still kept his measurements on file. He did not look at the room. He looked only at where she was placing her feet. His hand was at her elbow because she had asked, on the front steps, if he would mind walking her in. The quartet kept playing. The room did not stop. The room only paused for half a second, long enough that the music continued, and no one happened to be dancing. Carlton's face lost its calibration. Bennett looked at his phone. He stepped quietly out a side door and did not come back. Marlo did not stop to greet anyone. She walked the length of the room. She climbed the 3 small steps to the platform. She turned the microphone on. "Good evening." The room settled. "Before I make any announcement regarding the future of Ainsley and Belle, I want to thank my mother. And I want to say one thing my mother was not given a chance to say." She did not look at Carlton. She looked at the back of the room. Carlton began to move. He cut a polite diagonal through the seated tables, with the half-smile of a man going to correct a minor staffing issue. He was 3 tables from the platform when the side door at the back of the ballroom opened. Murray Sutton stepped through it, in a plain navy dress, her hands folded in front of her. Behind her came a tall woman in a charcoal suit carrying a leather portfolio. Behind the woman in charcoal came a man in his 60s, also in a suit, carrying a small recorder and a manila envelope. Carlton stopped between tables 11 and 12. His half-smile remained. His feet did not. Marlowe leaned back to the microphone. "My uncle, Carlton Pruitt, will not be giving any remarks this evening. The board meeting scheduled for Wednesday will proceed without him." A murmur began at the head table and spread along the wall. The string quartet, well trained, lifted into the next piece. Marlowe stepped down from the platform. Declan was waiting at the bottom step, hand offered. She took it once, lightly, and let it go. They walked together toward the side door where Mireille was standing. Carlton stood very still in the middle of the room. He had not yet decided which way to turn. A board member at table 4 pushed his chair back and stood up. The small parlor behind the ballroom had been used as a coat room and a quiet corner for over a century. Tonight it held 7 people. Marlowe, Declan, Mireille, the woman in charcoal, Eleanor Park, partner at the Boston firm, the older man with the recorder, Stephen Glazer, the firm's senior litigator, 2 independent trustees of the Ainsley estate, summoned by Eleanor at 4 that afternoon, under a clause neither of them had read in some time, and Carlton, who was the last to enter, and who closed the door himself. Mireille opened the manila envelope. She did not look at Carlton. She looked at the 2 trustees. She set down 3 photographs of dated trust documents, taken at Roper Hospital, on a hospital tray, between 11 and 11:12 at night, on a date the elder Ainsley had been on morphine for 48 hours. She set down a printed transcript of a 47-second audio recording. She set down the recorder. She pressed play. The voices in the recording were quiet but clear. Carlton, leaning over a bed. Marlowe's mother, refusing 3 times. Refusing again. A pen scratching. A door closing. The recording ended. Stephen Glazer slid a second folder across the table to the trustees. Bank records. Wire transfers. 7 years. $3,200,000. Moved in increments small enough to look like fees. From the Ainsley Trust account into a holding entity registered in Carlton's wife's maiden name. Carlton's smile was gone. He did not sit down. He did not, for the first time anyone in the room could remember, have anything to say. The trustee at the head of the table, a soft-voiced man named Whitfield who had known Marlowe's mother since the 1980s, set his hand flat on the documents. "That's enough, Carlton." Marlowe spoke once. She did not raise her voice. "You will tender your resignation from the board by Tuesday at noon. You will return the $3,200,000 in full by Friday. After that, it stops being a family matter and becomes Eleanor's." Eleanor Park, who had not yet spoken, gave Carlton a small nod that contained no warmth. Carlton stood for a long moment. He looked at Marlowe. There was nothing in his face she had not already known was there. He turned, opened the door, and walked out through the ballroom, without looking at the people whose hands he had shaken for 30 years. The door closed behind him. Mireille sat down for the first time that evening. Eleanor put a hand on her shoulder. The 2 trustees began, quietly, to confer. Declan stood by the wall the whole time. He had not spoken once. When the trustees and the lawyers and Mireille moved toward the door, he stayed. Marlowe walked over to him. She stopped a foot away. "Thank you," she said. "But you don't need to come to the tower tomorrow." "I know." He did not ask her anything else. She did not explain. Whatever had been between them as employer and night staff had ended in this room, and they both, without saying it, understood that the next day would not have a uniform in it. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, the kitchen of the apartment on Queen Street smelled of butter and sharp cheddar and the first burned edge of a pancake that had been left in the pan for 15 seconds too long. Juno stood on a wooden stool at the stove. She had pinned her hair back with 2 clips shaped like daisies. She was wearing the apron Declan had bought her for her 7th birthday, which was 3 sizes too large, and which she refused to outgrow. Marlowe stood beside her in a gray flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hair in a hasty knot, no makeup. On the counter were 2 coffee cups, a slightly uneven stack of pancakes, and a small jar of white hydrangeas Declan had set there that morning without comment. "Turn the heat up a little," Juno announced. "Don't let it be pale. Pale ones are sad." Marlowe laughed. It came out before she could decide whether to let it. She turned the knob a 1/4 inch. The next pancake, when she poured it, hissed properly. Declan sat at the small round table by the window, reading the Post and Courier. He did not look up often. The corner of his mouth, when he did, was soft in a way it had not been in 3 years. He folded the paper. He set it down. He stood. He came around behind Marlowe at the stove. He did not put his hands on her. He set something small and dark green on the wooden cutting board, an inch from her left hand. She had given it back to him at the Hibernian, in the parlor, after Carlton had walked out. She had said, that night, that she did not want to put it on under any other circumstance than the one in which it actually belonged. Declan said, low enough that only she could hear, this time it's not to save you. This time I'm asking. Marlowe did not turn. She lifted the spatula with her right hand and flipped the pancake that was beginning to burn at the edges. She set the spatula down. She picked up the box with her left hand. She did not open it ceremoniously. She lifted the ring out, slid it onto her right ring finger, where she had worn it once before. She turned back to the stove and flipped the next pancake. Juno, on the stool, was telling the pan an opinion about heat distribution. She had not seen what passed behind her. Declan stood very close. He set one hand, lightly, on Marlowe's shoulder. It was the first time he had touched her without a reason. Without an elbow to steady, a door to open, an arm to offer at a public event. It was a hand on a shoulder in a kitchen on a Saturday morning, and it stayed there. Outside on Queen Street, a church bell at Street Phillips struck the half-hour and was answered distantly by the bell at Street Michael's. She had not, in the end, found a husband by that Sunday. She had found the one person who had seen her drowning and had not asked why before he reached out his hand.